And welcome back to the Pack and Clint show. I'm Pack. I'm here with Joshy Manning. Today we will be, first, follow Ghost on Twitter. Follow Total Cover Sports on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. Follow our respective X accounts. I'm NBA Hornboy, and Joshy Manning is. I'm not sure where your ad is. You can say it right now.
I think it's just Joshy Manning ESQ. That's actually 100% what it is. So, yeah, I mean, if you want subpar sports takes, come on and follow me and come interact because I'm always a clapback king.
Yeah. So today, what we're going to be doing is we'll be going over two of the college football playoff games that Pack and I had previewed the previous week. We'll be going over the Alabama OU game as well as the Texas A&M Miami game, recapping what happened and what we saw from that game. We'll also be diving into a G5 playoff discussion, and then for the last part, we'll be previewing the Texas versus Michigan bowl game in the Cheez-It Bowl on December 31st. Before we start, how are you doing, Joshy?
I'm pretty good, man. I mean, obviously, a really fun weekend of football. Obviously, would have loved the Horns to have played, given kind of what our expectations were. But at the same time, I actually had a lot of fun with two of the games. The other two, obviously, we can have a discussion on, and that'll be a kind of a deeper discussion. But let me ask you this: what was the bigger surprise out of the Alabama OU and A&M Miami games?
I think the biggest surprise for me, honestly, even though when me and Pack talked about the Texas A&M Miami game, it was all about what quarterback is going to try and make their team lose the game the least. I did not expect the for lack of a better term, egregious football that I saw on Saturday. I went to that game in person. I paid money for that game, and what I ended up getting was it was just horrible football. I mean, you have a total of four missed field goals. You have a total of, I think it was, I don't know. I don't remember if Miami turned the. Yeah, they did turn the ball. You had four turnovers in the game. I mean, and then you didn't get a touchdown until the final minute of the game. So I didn't expect it to be that big of a slugfest, but other than that, I wasn't shocked too much. I was shocked that OU blew that 17-point lead. When that happened, I thought that OU was going to blow the doors off of them. But yeah, that would probably be the biggest surprise for me. What about you?
So I think we need to make two things clear before we kind of talk about both these games. One, I think that you know I think there's a difference between an ugly game and a slugfest. I think the special teams and the quarterback play in the A&M Miami was ugly, but I did not think that was an ugly game. I actually thought that was a really fun line of scrimmage battle between two teams who frankly have, at least on A&M's side offensively for purposes of line of scrimmage, they have done fairly well this year, as has Miami. And Miami, both of them have elite premier pass rushers. So I actually thought that the game wasn't necessarily a disaster class in football. Now the quarterback play was, both those quarterbacks stink, and we'll obviously talk about that. But I don't necessarily think that was an ugly game. I, truth be told, was more surprised at OU Bama for a couple reasons. One, I think the 17-point lead. I think any game this year where you have John Mateer playing well, I would have thought OU would have ran away with it. That didn't happen, which was kind of shocking. I think when OU got to a 17-point lead, I thought there was no way that they were going to lose that game simply because that defense snuffs out offenses, I was incorrect. And I kind of thought Brent Venables got just, out chess mastered from probably midway in the second quarter on. And I don't think Brent Venables is a top 10 coach. I think Kalen DeBoer is. But I was kind of surprised considering that Brent Venables has had Kalen DeBoer's number twice now. I just thought that was a little bit more surprising. I thought A&M was going to run away with the game, to be quite honest with you. But that one, I saw Miami winning more than I saw Alabama winning. So, whichever game you want to start with first, take it and we'll talk.
Yeah, I think we can start with the game that was on Friday night, Alabama at Oklahoma. Um, I'll let you start with your thoughts on this game from an overall aspect.
So, this was the first game where I thought OU's offense looked relatively competent. I thought John Mateer, this was his best game since what, Michigan? Like, I don't, yeah, right.
Probably.
It wasn't even that impressive, but I thought this was actually a really good John Mateer game. They got the run game started, which to me had been something that team had always lacked this entire year was their inability to run the ball. I think it has gotten better throughout the year simply because they've had the freshman, Fasusi, and then I think the other guy at right tackle, who I'm forgetting his name, who have gotten progressively better as the season has gone on. And I think finally this was kind of the ultimate. We're able to establish the run game now. I don't necessarily think Alabama's a great rushing defense, but I think kind of what OU did was more than enough to win. I kind of went this is generally kind of how football games work, as you know. It's a game of momentum, and it's really kind of if there's a win in a close game, it's generally a tale of two halves type thing. This was really a tale of one quarter versus a tale of three quarters, right? I thought OU for the first 15 to 20 minutes of the game, I'd say even 25, looked like the dominant team. And then here came Alabama. And for some, I don't really know, and maybe you can tell me why, but, you know, it felt like OU's pass rush was nullified. Maybe it was by quick passes. Maybe it was. I can't really speak to why it was nullified, but I do remember the first time OU and Bama played. R. Mason. He wasn't even in that game, but the pass rush was able to get home to Ty Simpson and make him really uncomfortable. Ty Simpson was not uncomfortable after about 20 minutes of game time, which obviously should have lit up red flags. But then, here's kind of what I think. I have to remember that in the game in Tuscaloosa, it took OU what, two turnovers and I think a pick six to win that game by 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of the way how that scoring works, right? That's a very unusual way to score. And if it took, winning the turnover differential by 2 or 3, in addition to having a turnover that resulted in 6, I probably should have taken Bama. I don't know. I think I just kind of fell in love with the idea of this OU team and Brent Venables causing all the chaos on the other side of the ball. To be frank with you, I had, in my head, I always thought Brent Venables was the coach of the year for me. I'm glad that they do the voting before the postseason starts, because if it was, I think that last 30 minutes was maybe some of the worst coaching I have seen in a very long time, where Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubbs were just, they kind of did whatever they wanted to with Brent Venables in his chaos defense. But, that's kind of where I'm at. OU dominated the first 15, 20 minutes, and I was like, all right, good night. And then Alabama just, kind of came back and basically asserted their will and kind of did whatever they wanted on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. No, sorry, were you done?
Yeah. All you.
Okay. So, obviously what you just said, for tale of one quarter, really. Yeah, that first quarter, I would say dominating was kind of an understatement, to be honest. OU was taking them to the woodshed. They were it looked like the game could end up being like which granted I knew it wasn't going to be just because they're better teams than they're better caliber team than to get absolutely demolished. But it looked like it could have been like a 38-7 type of game. But obviously Alabama made the adjustments. As you were asking, what changed? From what I remember, I think that they started to have extra blockers in pass pro, whether it was an extra tight end, an extra running back, or whatever it was. I think they brought more men in pass pro, and also I think they did a lot more quicker developing plays, if I can remember right. Even though a lot of their touchdowns were deep shots, they did have a lot more shorter passes. Either way, though, Alabama they fought back, and honestly, the way they looked and why it was so surprising to me is because we've seen Alabama at towards the end of the season. They've been regressing offensively at least. I don't remember when it started exactly, but you could see it in the SEC championship game. You could see it in the Auburn game, even though they scored, I think it was 27 points, they were struggling that game. You saw it in the OU game, obviously with the multiple turnovers, in the LSU game. You've seen it in a lot of games this year where Alabama hasn't really been getting the ball rolling. Where in the first half of the season, or maybe even a little bit more than that, Ty Simpson looked like a Heisman finalist. I mean, he was playing amazing. He only had one interception on the year at one point, with I think 20 something touchdowns or something. And then after that, he's had a turnover almost every game. So uh, I was very impressed to see Alabama's offense come back and play a lot better than it has this whole season, especially against a really good defense that Brent Venables um, usually carries out throughout the years. Maybe there's a year or two at Oklahoma where that isn't the case. But either way, I was very impressed with that comeback. Oklahoma, uh, obviously, as a Texas fan, you love to see that. It was definitely a great start to a weekend of hate watch for them and the next team we'll talk about. But
So
I don't really have.
let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. How impressive was it for you for Ty Simpson to be able to do that to that OU defense without having a semblance of a run game?
Very. It was
Yeah.
very because what we've seen, and I think and like we can go to the Texas game for example. The only reason why I think we even won that game and our offense even started to move is because Quintravion Wisener started to tote the rock and get us yards. Because at least what we've seen from him is every single time he's in a rivalry game, he plays like he's I don't even know, I wouldn't say Bijan, but he plays like he's one of the best running backs we've had. Um, and also the Ole Miss game, Ole Miss when they beat them, they had somewhat of a run game going. So I think when you're trying to beat a OU team, especially with that type of defense, you're going to need to have some semblance of a run game. You saw they had Jam Miller back, but Jam Miller, even when he was back, he wasn't 100%. He wasn't doing what he was doing before his injury. So I was very impressed that they were able to stay that one dimensional and come out with the win.
Well, and I had to go back and look because I'm looking right now at Ole Miss's rushing stats. They averaged 2.8 yards a carry. I mean, it wasn't like they were able to run the ball exceedingly well. It was 41 for 116. Trinidad Chambliss was actually their best runner on a yard per basis carry, or carry per yard per carry. There we go. Yeah. No, I mean, it's weird because I don't like. I'm not going to sit here and say I think Bama beats Indiana. That's but I see a little bit more of a path than I did previously. Right. If Bama would have beaten OU in a manner, in an ugly game that basically looked like the inverse of how OU beat Bama in Tuscaloosa, I would have said, no, this is, I don't buy this. Bama's going to get crushed by Indiana. But I think Ty Simpson, and this is maybe a very hot take, I think Ty Simpson is a higher level quarterback than Julian Sayin is. I think Julian Sayin's great. I just think Julian Sayin also has maybe the best receiving core college football has seen in 10 years, outside of Joe Burrow and Joe Burrow's LSU team. So, and last year's Ohio State. Either way, this is a very good wide receiver room that Julian Sayin has. I think he benefits heavily from it. I think Ty Simpson's highs, I think he's a better quarterback. So I'm not saying that I think Alabama's going to beat Indiana, but I think that's a more interesting game than I initially thought I'd give credit to.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you don't have anything else to say, we can move on to the next game. Next game that happened 11 a.m. on Saturday. Miami at Texas A&M. Miami comes away with a 10-3 win. What were your thoughts throughout the game? Your thoughts pregame and just how everything ended up turning out?
Bart, cover your ears. This is going to get ugly. Um, I one of the worst narratives that I've seen now coming about this stupid, god awful game. And it's not necessarily that I wanted A&M to win because I don't know if I did. For my wife's sake, I did. And for my father-in-law's sake, because he came back from that game dejected. But the worst narrative that I've seen coming out now is that there's a person who has a show on Ghost Channel who is now saying that the ACC is a gauntlet because Miami all of a sudden beat A&M.
Is
And
that
that pisses
Avery?
me off. It's Savannah. And she
Oh,
knows how much that pisses me off. Because I that was dirty and it was bad and it's not true. We talked about this early on, right? This is a what quarterback sucks the least, right? What quarterback sucks the least? I don't know. And part of this is, right, what quarterback sucks the least, but a secondary aspect of this is what coach came prepared to play this stupid game. Colin Klein did not come prepared. I mean, what he like, I guess he just packed all his bags, had already moved everything to Manhattan, and basically just quiet quit this job. I mean, what a pathetic showing from that guy. And I think College Station is probably all right. Panda Posse, I'll get to you next. I think Colin Klein, had he not taken the Kansas State job, he would have been run out of College Station after that performance. I don't know if it would have been as bad had he not, but that's always a fun discussion. I don't know. Like I said, this was not an ugly game. This was actually a very well played game on the line of scrimmage, which was a lot of fun, right? Watching Bain go against Zune, who, initially I thought that Zune had done a poor job on, pass pro on Bain, but then I went back and rewatched a lot of it, and I actually came away fairly impressed with Trey Zune against Ruben Bain. Same with Francis. How do you pronounce his name? Magala. Is that the guy, the left tackle or right tackle for Bama, or not? Excuse me, the left tackle for Miami, the guy who's a first rounder.
I'm not sure, to be completely
Yeah,
honest.
so he went up against Cassius Howland. That was a pretty fun. So it was really high level line of scrimmage play on both sides, outside of A&M's run defense not being able to stop a rudimentary run game. Jay Bateman and Jay Bateman getting running out because his linebackers haven't been able to stuff run bits now for 3 years. So I don't know. I'm not. There's so much to say about this game. The special teams were ugly. The fact that Elko got out coached by Mario Cristobal was pretty sad. The 12th man was loud. I guess that's a good thing, right? Like, what do you have to say if you're an A&M fan at this point, right? Like, this was a great season. 11-1's awesome. But we lost to Miami in what may have been the dumbest college football playoff game that has been played in a while.
Yeah, I mean that's not probably not wrong saying that. I can't remember really much of another game that was that low scoring and at least from an offensive point of view that bad. Um, but if you're done, I can take the reins and give my thoughts.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so special teams, yeah, that's what I'll start with, just because I think it was the most glaring, ugly part of the game. Which I'll give you your point. I guess it wasn't an ugly game, but if you liked offense, you definitely didn't enjoy that game. But yeah, for the special teams, that was horrible. Now, granted, there were 30-mile-per-hour gusts, and like I said, I was there. The wind was really hard. So I'll give them that, but still, I mean, there were some like short, like under 40 yards that you still need to make no matter what the wind is. Um, so that was bad. I mean, A&M having to bring in Randy Bond, who they benched, and when you hear Sean McDonough in the fourth quarter get so excited for a field goal, you know that there's been pretty atrocious offense being played. Um, Line of scrimmage, though, you were right on that. It was a very good game in the line of scrimmage, other than A&M's run defense, because um, they let Mark Fletcher go for 172 yards with 10.1 yards per carry. I mean, you can't do that and expect to win, especially in a game where you're moving the ball. Because I think A&M was moving the ball pretty decently for a good amount of the game. It's just they could never punch it in and never capitalize on their points. For one of the examples, when they tried to kick that first field goal, they got blocked and they were inside the 5. I mean, up to that point, Miami was not moving the ball whatsoever. I think you go for that and you try and get a touchdown off that, because if not, then at very worst, they're inside the 5 with an offense that, like I said, wasn't moving the ball whatsoever. So that was one of the decisions that I thought was poorly managed. Um, Heatherman did a really great job on defense, though, putting Colin Klein in the box, I feel like, at a lot of times, especially later in the game. Um, I don't really know what much more I can say about the game. I mean,
Well, here's my question, and I know we've talked about this offline, right? Um, can you trot out Marcel Reed after that if you're Mike Elko? After the last 2 games, can you trot Marcel Reed out next year and put on a face and say, "Yes, I believe this guy can win us football games." And let me hold on, meaningful football games in a playoff run. Can you do that if you're Mike Elko?
so I think, in my opinion, it all depends on what your O line situation is this year, because they're losing a lot of guys, a lot of O linemen. If you can go in the portal and you can get a lot of good, solid offensive linemen to replace your guys, or you feel good about your guys that are coming up, then I think you can go get yourself a portal quarterback. But if you don't get the guys that you want in the portal for the offensive line, and you're not as confident as you wish you were about your guys coming up, I think you need Marcel Reed's just for his legs, to be completely honest, because if you're going to be playing with an offense that's going to be having a pocket collapse and not have a very solid pass protection, you're going to need those legs to buy time and create plays. So I think, I don't know, like, because we've seen Marcel Reed have good games this year, but at times also, and I know this is it's kind of a dumb point to make, but I feel like a lot of times his receivers made a lot of plays for him, and it wasn't necessarily him. Um, but that's kind of my answer to that. I think if you can get yourself a good offensive line, then I think you can go get yourself another quarterback in the portal, possibly. Unless Miles O'Neill is just progressing amazingly in the offseason, then you can maybe trot him out. But if you can't get a good offensive line, you're gonna have your pocket collapsing and bunch of guys just free in the backfield. I think you're gonna need Marcel Reed for his legs.
I think I think that if Elko wants to be taken seriously by the BMAs, the Champions Club guy, all those big money donors, I think he would tell them, "Hey, you know, um, I think I want a new quarterback," or at least float the idea, because if they do, if he floats the idea, right, then at least the big money donors are like, "Okay, this guy wants to win." Um, and really what Marcel's problem was Marcel's problem wasn't necessarily that he couldn't accurately throw the ball. The problem is, outside of deep balls, the problem is when you take away Reed one with a semi decent pass rush, I think he just speeds up his progressions and things don't get there when they need to get there. Right.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Casey Concepcion, I think I've said this a couple times. I think he's probably the most electric playmaker in the SEC. I think that guy probably won them at least 2, maybe 3 games. Had he not been in the Texas game, I don't think A&M gets anywhere remotely near scoring. And I think that game's probably a 33 to nothing game. And I'm not saying this to rage bait my A&M friends. I'm not. What I am saying is that Casey Concepcion was that good. So all that being said, right? What is your situation? Where do you go if you're A&M? And you don't need to make the playoffs next year. That's not right. I picked them to make the playoffs this year. I don't think they make them next year simply because of the attrition, especially on that offensive line, which was the strength of that team. Um, but that's kind of where I am with that. I don't really think I've got any more to say. That I think more of it is an off season type. I thought, I'll end with this though. I thought Elko called a really good defensive game. I think there wasn't anything else that he could have done. I mean, you can make the argument, oh, Miami marching down the field at the end of the game, blah blah blah. I didn't see it like that. I just saw a defense that was absolutely gassed after being on the field a significant amount of time, where you didn't have Albert Regis, like Bart mentioned, who Albert Regis was kind of the anchor of that defense on the front. Um, where they basically had an offensive line that was in rhythm and had some momentum, just being able to get those runs through. And then, Malachi Tony, I think, wanting to make up for his muff punt. So, or not muff punt, excuse me, the muff reception on, I think, the 40 or 50 when they were driving. So, I
Yeah.
don't blame Elko on that on the defensive aspect of it. But, oh man, that's a weird offseason that A&M is going to have.
Yeah, I'll end with this point though. And I agree with your point that Elko called a great game because I mean, if you're holding them to only 10 points and you can't win that game, that's not on your defense. I mean, if you're holding them to 10 points, you should be able to win any game. And I mean, he held them to only 3 points until just under 2 minutes left in the game. So that was not Elko's fault at all that game. Yeah, you can say what you want about those last two drives, but I mean, if your offense can't go down and score 10 points, that's more so on your offensive play caller and your quarterback and your players out there rather than your defense. Um, but I do think one thing that is interesting is for most of the year, A&M's been playing ahead. They haven't had to play behind in most games, so they've caused a lot of teams to have to start airing the ball out early. A lot of these teams got impatient and just wanted to start throwing it, and you never really got to see the run defense for A&M. Really have to work on defense because other than that Notre Dame game, they were not close in many of those other games. I would say the only I would say you started to see the run defense get somewhat exposed in the South Carolina first half, and then I think in the Texas game that's when it really got exposed because the whole year, in all honesty, they haven't been a great run defense against Missouri with Ahmad Hardy, who you could say is the best back in the SEC if you want. Um, the reason why they were able to stop that outside zone and they were able to stop that run is because you have a third string quarterback, Matt Zollers, who gave A&M no reason to respect his throwing ability. So when you
They
have a
did
bunch
well
of
with
the
Jaden Ball. They did well with Jaden Ball. They played Florida. They did fairly well with Jaden Ball.
yeah, but what my point is that when you're playing from behind for a lot of the game, um, it kind of forces them to start airing the ball more. But yeah, I guess you can say they did fine with Jaden Ball, but I still stand with my point that their run defense has not been great, and it's been the
No,
weakness of their team, to be completely honest.
no, and,
Um,
and that's been 2 years running. And then that just begs the question: how much better does it get under Elko when Elko gets his guys in? Which is possible. We're just basically seeing that we're at a point where these guys who are currently in the system aren't Elko's guys, and they need to kind of recycle them out in order to get Elko's guys in to be able to or to increase their run defense. As that may be it. Um, but I also think some of it may come with Jay Bateman and uh, his linebacker fits and things like that. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm, A&M probably will get better on the defensive side of the ball next year. I just think they're going to take a significant step back on the offensive side, which is going to just beg the question: what do they look like next year? I don't know. We'll see what the portal gives.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with that, and also with them promoting Holloman Wiggins to offensive play caller. So
Yeesh.
definitely be interesting to see how they progress offensively or decline offensively, whichever way it is. But I think we're ready to move on. So we're not going to cover the Oregon or the Ole Miss games just because I think those games going into it, you knew it was going to happen, and what happened was exactly what you knew was going to happen. So this is going to be more of a discussion on where should G5 teams stand in terms of the playoffs? Should they have their own playoff? Should they be included in the 12-team playoff? Um, just what your overall thoughts are on that.
They they have to be included in the playoffs from an antitrust perspective, a legal antitrust perspective, right? If they're not, then the NCAA will get sued for antitrust issues because the way this kind of works, and I'm really kind of summarizing this and doing a very poor job at the particulars in the legal aspect that you kind of need to discuss. But one of the big things is if you have a college football playoff that is meant for the entirety of Division 1 college football, Division 1, the Division 1, the 126 teams that are in there. And
FBS.
right, sure, right, FBS, and you have essentially 48 to 50 something teams that are they are the only ones in the conversation. They are the only ones who have automatic bids, and everything else gets shut out. You're essentially shutting out 65% of the teams that are going to be in this field, right? Which then in turn robs them of money, right? Because these playoffs, the playoffs generate revenue for a lot of these schools that they would not have but for the playoff appearance. So you have to have a G5 team in as a legal matter. Now, you have to have it as a 16 team playoff in order to make this feasible, right? I don't think it can be feasible as 12 because I think when you are at a 12-team playoff, you are taking teams out that actually have a shot to compete for a national title. At 16, you are essentially baking in lambs, in my opinion, right? 16, I think Michigan would have been in, which we all know Michigan would have gotten their, shit kicked in. But for the fact that, we are at 16, that generates revenue for putting them in. They may win a game, right? I think it's fine to put them in. That's where a G5 team gets fit in my opinion. I don't think you can fit in a G5 team and a 12 team simply because you are kicking teams out. When it's a 16, that 15, that 14, 15, 16, those guys aren't going to win unless it's a really weird year. Those aren't going to be teams that win it. So I think you have to have an automatic qualifier in the 16 team playoff. And then at that point, what we end up saying is, well, is there a G5 team that takes an at large bid, right? You can't deny a G5 team an at large bid. I don't think it happens, but you just can't do it, right? So, in the current 12 team playoff, a G5 team can't be in. I think that they're going to expand to 16 and then give them the highest G5, right? The highest rated G5 conference champion, a playoff spot. Um, but as much as I would love to have a G5 separate playoff, legally that would just not work because it doesn't generate the revenue that the college football playoff would.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know anything about that with the legal implications regarding that. What the just quick question, just like a yes or no, um would that same policy like apply if the college football playoff just said, "Hey, we're going to do no automatic qualifiers"? Would they still have the possibility of getting sued for that?
Yes, because the way that I would see it would be if you're doing if there are no or if everything's automatic qualifiers, what they essentially would end up doing is they would freeze out G5 teams most of the time because they would say, well, the strength of schedule isn't here. In addition to the fact that the strength of schedule isn't to the level that the Power Four teams are, in addition to that, the talent rankings aren't there. And then if we look at the Vegas odds have 2 to 3 score or 3 to 4 score spreads. There's no reason to do this for automatic or for the at-large bids, given the fact that we have SEC, Big Ten, ACC, Big 12 teams that could actually compete. So no, that they would. My understanding, or at least my thought, would be they would call it. Um, they would say they were excluding them. Kind of as a matter of fact, right? It's almost like disguised. Uh, I don't want to say. I don't want to say segregation, but the phrase would be essentially they are purposely keeping them out by implementing rules that would not allow them to actually have a at large bid.
Yeah, I mean that's honestly the perfect word for describing what you were just saying. Yeah, I didn't know any of that stuff, so I guess unfortunately we'll have to keep now if they expand to 16. I think if you can't get in that large bid in the 16 playoff, you just don't deserve it in general. But I guess unfortunately you're still gonna have these blowouts every year because I guess from legally that perspective, you're going to need to have at least one of those teams in. But I think we can segue on to um, I think the big talking point of this live stream, the Texas versus Michigan Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando, Florida, on December 31st, 3 p.m. Uh, Texas going in. Just falling short of the playoffs. I think they were the first team out of the first two, um, and you have some of the guys leaving for the draft, some of the guys in transfer portal, which we'll get to mid preview, and you also have Michigan coming in with a interim head coach in Biff Poggi, and you don't know what guys are going to play for Michigan and what guys are going to sit. So it's going to be a very interesting game in terms of the new guys who are going to be playing that weren't starters in terms of Michigan with the new head coach. And I think it's just, and then also Texas with the new defensive play caller, at least for this game. And I think it's Johnny Nansen.
Correct.
Um, yeah. So you're going to have a lot of new pieces in this game and a lot of things you haven't seen all season or seen before. So I'm going to let you start off with this and give your initial thoughts.
So I think we have to kind of start on the offensive side of the ball because I think that has been the well, both have been inconsistent, but let's go ahead and start on the offensive side. So I think every starter is playing outside of DeAndre Moore. Obviously, since DeAndre Moore entered the transfer portal, right? You've got injuries who we didn't think was going to play or was considering not playing to kind of weigh his options. So now he's playing, which tells me that he's either going to stay next year or go to the draft, right? All the offensive linemen, including Cole Hudson and DJ. Am I right? Is DJ Campbell playing? I think he is.
I can check that real quick.
Yeah, please
But
do. 'Cause, that'll affect kind of how I see this. But I thought DJ Campbell was playing, which is obviously a great thing, considering he's probably or he has been the best interior offensive lineman we have. Um, Having both tackles plays great. Ultimately, just having the whole offensive line and the unit itself playing is incredibly, incredibly important. We know that there have been a couple opt outs on the defensive side of the ball with Michigan. I can't remember who they are, but I think there was a couple draft eligible guys. Which, in terms of that, right, you essentially have NFL talent on Texas's side of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball, that's going to be going up against second stringers. So, and Michigan's defense has been okay. I don't think they've been anything super special that would I would think, well, we'd need our first string to kick the first string, our first string offense would be hampered by Michigan's defense, their first team defense. Um, I feel very confidently that our offense does well against Michigan's defense. I mean, Sark kind of owns, the that who is it? It's oh God, what's his name? The old Giants guy. Oh my God, what's their defensive coordinator's name? He was in the NFL for a while or for a really long time. Oh, I can't think of his
I,
name.
I'm not an NFL guy, so I don't know. But
Yeah.
I do have your answer. DJ Campbell will be playing.
Okay, great. So then, yeah, I feel really confident about that. I mean, we kicked Michigan's ass defensively in that 23 season. Obviously, a little bit different, but I think different playmakers, different. But a lot of that was simply a scheme thing where Sark just simply outcoached that. Who? What is his name? I can't think of his name. Damn it. Um, so that's where I'm at there. The defensive side of the ball is the one that's interesting to me. I am intrigued to see how our defense lines up against that offense, right? One thing that you mentioned, right? Bill Poggi is the head coach, but if you recall, their offensive coordinator recently left to take Mizzou's offensive coordinator job. So not only are they playing without a head coach, they're playing without their offensive coordinator. So that intrigues me, right? Obviously, the problem that we're going to have on the defense is we're going to be down Ethan Burke, Leonga Lafau, Malik Muhammad, Jalen Gilbo, which really isn't a loss, but I'll say it there. Anthony Hill, and I think that's it. But we're going to have a lot of inexperience.
And Michael Taft's not playing.
And Michael Taft, thank you. So we're probably going to be running with cornerbacks. There's probably going to be Kobe Black and Wardell.
Cade Phillips.
Cade Phillips. Wardell will get some run. Warren Roberson will get some run. And I'm sure one other guy is going to get some run. Safeties is going to be Phil Sami, Jelani. It'll be, I would assume, Jordan Johnson-Rebel will get some run. Maybe, or we'll obviously get some Jonah Williams run. The linebackers is what's interesting, right? I mean, who are our linebackers? It's Ty Anthony,
Brad Spence, Bo Barnes,
and then Brady Sarkeesian, and then the guy, and then the other walk-on, the guy who got the scholarship.
Marshall Landwehr.
Yeah, Marshall Landwehr. And that's going to be like the real issue in this game that I'm going to have a giant problem with. I don't know how we are going to be able to stop Michigan from running the ball. Michigan, let alone anyone, right, without linebackers who actually have meaningful experience outside of Brad Spence and Ty Anthony Smith. Defensive line, I'm not worried about. Obviously, Ethan Burke isn't playing, but I think Lance Jackson is a star in the making, and I think this is really good for him to get some run. Colin Simmons is Colin Simmons. I'd be curious to know how long he plays. Maybe he plays the whole game, but I'd also like to see Zena get some run. He's been exceptional. I'd like to see Smith Orogbo get some run. And on that interior, Cole Brevard, January, Travis Shaw, Hero Canoe is coming back, which is great. And then I'm sure they're going to run the freshmen, Sharma, Charles, and Justice Terry. But
and I mean, also on the edges, you'll have Colin Vosek. I don't know, is he injured or?
I mean, I always kind of think he's injured unless he's not. Like, unless otherwise, I think I'm kind of in the position where I think he's always injured. But really, I think what it comes down to is how do we ensure that our linebackers are operating properly at the second level, right? We're out Anthony Hill, which is great, or not great, but, we did well without him against A&M, but we also had Trey Moore there, and I forgot to add Trey Moore in there. Trey Moore's not playing. It was Trey Moore and Ty Anthony Smith, and they played really well. And Leongala, they all played really well, but two of those three guys are gone. So there's going to be a lot of responsibility on Bo Barnes, right? A lot of responsibility on Bo Barnes. And to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, this kind of feels like the, piss or get off the pot game for Bo Barnes, right? You have Tyler Atkinson coming in next year who's going to play. You've got one, maybe two portal linebackers who are going to come in, and I think we know who one of the linebackers probably will be who's coming in. And we know that guy's going to be a playmaker. So this to me feels like the Bo Barnes, are you going to be in the rotation next year? Because we know that Will Muschamp going to take over that linebacker spot, and he's going to be watching that game with interest.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very fair take to have. As you mentioned, we have Tyler Atkinson coming in, who's should be, if he lives up to his hype and his potential, one of the best linebackers Texas has ever seen on the 40. You also have Ty Anthony Smith, who he's made a name for himself. He's going to be in the rotation. I'm pretty confident saying that. You'll have Brad Spence still, and then you'll have probably some portal guys that I would assume at least one of them will end up being a guy who is constantly in the rotation and a big playmaker for us. So I think this definitely is the game for Bo Barnes to really make a name for himself and show what he has and what they've been leaving on the bench. So I think this is that game where he has to come out with a fire and he has to play like it's his last ever game, because it could be his last game at Texas, at least playing on the field. So very interested to see how he plays, but I think that's a pretty fair take to have.
So, I mean, like, obviously we're playing this game, right? Doesn't have much meaning outside of pride, right? Getting to 10 wins is a good thing. We'll have gotten to 10 wins for 10 wins, 3 seasons in a row for the first time probably since the mid 2000s.
It was first time since 07 to 09.
Okay, I was going to say 07. I was thinking 03 to 05 or 07 to 09. Which is a big thing, right? That's very important for this program. It's a trajectory aspect. 10 wins looks a lot better than 9 wins, and you can also recruit off that, blah, 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 blah. Like, outside of that and seeing the young guys play, are you, like, if we lose this game, are you heartbroken?
I wouldn't say I'm heartbroken. Obviously, you want to get the 10 wins. I think I'll just more so be annoyed because, like I said, I'm going to be going to that game, so I'm going to have to deal with TSA and all the airport stuff. After losing in a bowl game where the attendance is probably gonna be what, like 50%, 60%, I'd say maybe. I don't know how much I expect it to be full. Which, granted, you have two fan bases who are really passionate and who can travel really well, but I don't know how full it's going to be for a team who has no head coach, no like actual head coach, and another team who just barely missed. But
So one thing that you bring up, and I kind of have forgotten to talk about this. Well, kind of two aspects. One being, if we lose this game, there are going to be certain fan bases. They are going to jump at the opportunity to say that we lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So from a Twitter perspective, they're going to be insufferable. Jackson Arnold enthusiast. What a scrub that guy is. But no, like the Michigan game, the Michigan team can go one of two ways. One way is that this team is completely demoralized after the, quite frankly, shocking firing of Sharon Moore, how all that went down. Who knew what? Can you trust it? I mean, I can't think of a more shocking firing, and that's happened in a while, right? Maybe the Joe Paterno one back when that happened, but I can't think of anything more shocking than what happened with the Sharon Moore situation. Either it demoralizes them or it galvanizes them, right? They decide to, circle the wagons around who they are. They say, we're going to go out and play this one for pride because, all the crap that's happened, we're motivated. We're going to go out and we're going to kick some ass, right? What do you think is more likely? Because I kind of think this determines the outcome of the game.
I think, to be completely honest, I don't know necessarily that they galvanize in a bowl game like this. I think if it was maybe mid-season, they would galvanize. But I don't know if I see that team really getting fired up for Biff Poggi, which I'm pretty sure he did do an interim head coaching spot in one of their games this year for a suspension for Sharon Moore for, I think, the violations with the NCAA. But I just don't know if they're going to be that fired up for a bowl game. Granted, they're playing a good team, so maybe they will. But I think you still have yet to see what players, and you probably won't see till after this game, what players are going to hit the portal because of this, what players are going to get their request a release from their NLI, and just what the other effects of this are. But unfortunately, the truth is we just won't know till we see it on game day. But either way, regardless if they're coming out on fire or not, I think that Texas still wins because, one, I thought, like, with just our roster as it was without any transfer portal or leaving for the draft or sitting out, I thought we were the better team. I still think that we're the better team, and I don't necessarily think that I'm not going to say I don't think it's close because that's just going to be straight cocky, but I think that we stack up really well. Now, defensively, we will have a struggle, but I think that offensively, I think that we'll do really good. Unfortunately, like you said, DeAndre Moore is going to be out, but I think that it's a great chance for us to see Khalid Lockett get a lot of playing time possibly. You're going to see Dalen McCutcheon out there more. You're going to see Parker Livingston, obviously, who's been starting all year. and you're going to see Mosley and Wingo. Um, Also, one thing that I think is going to be interesting is the running game. If we see Michael Terry get some touches, because from what I've heard from multiple places, that Michael Terry's been getting running back reps. I could be wrong in practice, um, but I've heard that he has, and he's been doing good. Correct me, am I right in this? Or
No, I think that's right. I remember reading that Michael Terry was looking good at the running back spot, which, like, frankly, he needs to be a running back. I don't. We don't need to keep doing this receiving experiment anymore. I don't really know how else you use Michael Terry outside of being some sort of H back. Uh, I mean, I don't necessarily want to say that we'll do the Savion Red Cat like we did back in
I was
23.
I was gonna say that honestly, he might end up being like a Savion Red role. That's so.
Which is
Um,
going to be great. We're paying, six figures to a guy who basically plays like 4 plays a game. Awesome. We could have let Oregon have that one. But like, if that is his contribution to the team, that's great. But yeah, no, he needs to play running back. I know Jabbar Jalouk has been working with the running backs. He seemed to that room seems to have been revitalized. And it wasn't that Chad Scott was a bad coach. I don't think anyone would say that. I think, sometimes things just aren't a good fit. And it sounds like Chad Scott necessarily wasn't a good fit for what Steve Sarkisian wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think Michael Terry, like you said, is he probably should be playing running back now. Is the better time than ever, because you have CJ Baxter, who he's in the portal now, so he's not going to be playing. You have Jared Gibson, who left midseason. You have Ricky Stewart, who, to be completely frank, has been MIA since before the season even started. So right now, your running backs are Trey Wisner, Christian Clark, and James Simon. So I think you get Michael Terry some touches in that game. I think it's a perfect opportunity to see what he can do, because we really haven't had an opportunity to see that. I don't even know if he was targeted on a single pass on the year. Maybe he was against Sam Houston, but I don't.
No, I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think so.
So yeah, I don't really remember too much about that. But I'm very excited to see a lot of these new guys play, though, because it's the yeah, obviously you want to be in a playoff. You much rather be in a playoff than a bowl game. But I think the fun thing about these bowl games is that you really get to see the future of your team and what guys could possibly end up being huge contributors in the future, with all the guys who opt out. So although you'd rather have your starters who have been there all year to play just for safety of a win, I think it is kind of a cool little scout. I would say almost somewhat of like a scouting game to just see what you have for your future.
I think that's right. I think that's right. So picks. What's the pick?
So right now, I'm gonna go with Texas winning the game. I'm gonna go probably because, like I said, I don't think the defense is gonna be as, which granted wasn't that great at the end of the season, but I still see us giving up some plays. I think it'll end up being a 34-27 win for Texas. I think that Michigan will get a garbage time touchdown with like 30 seconds left to cut it to 7, but I have confidence that Texas can come out the win on this game.
I think that's too many points for Michigan. I don't think they're galvanized. I think they're kind of defeated. I don't think they have the offensive firepower. I was looking at what they did against the Big Ten, and the most points they scored in Big Ten play was 45 against Maryland, and Maryland stinks. Um, they scored 21 against Purdue, 24 against Northwestern, 31 against Michigan State, 24 against Washington. I don't know. I don't buy that offense being an offense that's going to be able to score a lot. Meanwhile, I think Sark kind of wants to turn on the gas on this one, because I think he wants to give some confidence to an offense going into the offseason that he knows is going to need a lot of work and want a lot of work. Give me Texas 38, Michigan 17.
I would love that score. Hopefully that ends up coming to fruition. Real quick though, I do want to do kind of game day style picks where it's kind of like a lightning pick where you give maybe a 1 minute opinion on the game and then you give your pick. We'll do the
Yep.
4 college football playoff games for the next round. I
Yep.
think we can start off with the Miami Ohio State game. Just real quick, who do you have for that game?
Give me Ohio State 27, Miami 17. I think Ohio State's skill players are going to make the difference in this game. I think Miami has a very good line of scrimmage, and I think they're going to make Ohio State very uncomfortable. The Ohio State's defensive line uncomfortable. I think Ohio State's offensive line is very average, and I think Miami's defensive line is going to give them trouble. But I would say that with Ryan Day calling plays again, I trust and Matt Patricia giving Carson Beck a lot of really different issues and putting him in hell. I don't see Miami doing much offensively. I say 17 because I think they may score a late touchdown. So give me Ohio State by 2 scores.
Yeah, I agree with picking Ohio State there. I think the interesting thing, the only thing I would say for Ohio State is that I think that their run defense has been overrated this year. They played a lot of teams who are very piss poor in the run game, so I think that Mark Fletcher could give them some fits there, and I think that they could maybe dial up some what I don't know, because also it didn't really work for St. M the Wildcat with Malachi Tony, but other than that, I think that Ohio State I think they're just going to out talent Miami, to be completely real with you. Obviously, Miami has some dogs, but I think Ohio State is a very solid team, at least offensively. Ryan Day, who was a very great offensive coach, great offensive play caller, he's back calling plays. I think it's going to be a huge thing for them, and definitely going to be an upgrade from, I think it was Brian Hartline calling plays for them. So I'm going to go with Ohio State. Give me them. I'm going to go 24 to 13. I'm gonna go with that score. Um, Next game will be in the Orange Bowl, Oregon versus Texas Tech, 11 a.m. on New Year's Day. Who do you have in that game?
Oh God, both these teams suck. Can I pick the nuke? Can I pick the sweet meteor of death? I hate both these teams. Oregon by 7 because I hate Texas Tech more. Listen, I think Tech's defense is really good. I think they're really good. I think Joey McGuire is a shithead, though. I think he's being carried by 2 really good coordinators. I think the only thing that he does well is yell and you know make Brett Yormark not look like an idiot. Um, I just think Dan Lanning's a better coach. Maybe we have an issue where Will Stein and Taj Lapoy are doing exactly what Bateman and Colin Klein were doing. I hope not, because if that's the case, then I think Tech wins. But I don't see a world where Baron Morton outduels Dante Moore. I would say give me 30-23 Oregon.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Oregon right there too. I'm going to go with a low scoring game. I'm going to probably go about 27 to 17. Um, Granted, I think that Texas Tech has a championship caliber defense. But what I will say to counter that is I think that Oregon will create turnovers, because I don't think that Texas Tech is a great offensive team. Um, you can say that they got a lot of points against BYU in that second game, but also a lot of those were created off turnovers. Their offense hasn't really won them any games, besides the games where they played teams that were under 500 or just at 500. So those were games where they're playing a team with a much higher talent gap than they were against either BYU or what they're going to have against Oregon. I think Oregon's going to out-talent them. I think Dante Moore's an amazing quarterback. I think they have a great running back tandem, especially with Davison. I think he's an amazing runner. So I'm going to go with Oregon win that game about 27 to 17. Second to last game will be Alabama versus Indiana in the Rose Bowl. For that game, I'm going to take Indiana in that game. I think that Alabama will play them tough. I think that it'll be a close game to the end. But I think that Indiana overall, I think you saw it in the Ohio State game. If you had any doubts about them, even after Oregon, you shouldn't have many doubts about them now, especially their defense. Their defense is no joke. And I think that they're going to give, honestly, even though I think Oklahoma's defense is better, I think that Indiana's going to give Alabama's offense a lot more trouble. And I think that Indiana's going to come away with the win. I'm going to go with probably honestly a 30 to 23 game.
We have to have some disagreement. I think this is where I disagree. I'm going to go Bama. I know I talked about it earlier that doesn't mean that Bama beats Indiana, but I think one of the things that has intrigued me about this Indiana team, obviously, I don't disagree with you that the Ohio State win wasn't a legitimate and real win. Obviously, that is the best win in college football, but I also think that Ohio State played that game very vanilla. I don't think they cared to win the Big Ten. Well, obviously they'd like to win the Big Ten, but I don't think that was their main prerogative, and I don't think they wanted to put much on film. I think that Kalen DeBoer has gotten a lot of crap at being the Alabama head coach, and I kind of think he's done taking it. I think he wants to have some sort of momentum because, and I've been saying this, I still think Kalen DeBoer is going to be Michigan's head coach. I know that they've been talking about the Jeff Brom thing, but I still think I still think there's looming in the water there with Kalen DeBoer, which is probably going to, give him a little bit of credence or make the Bama team or the Bama fans happier. But I saw Ty Simpson play probably, or not probably. I saw the Ty Simpson that we saw in weeks 4 through 7, 4 through 8, which was the Heisman frontrunner Ty Simpson, right? If that Ty Simpson comes to play, I don't know if there's a team in college football outside of maybe Georgia that can give him or that can stop him or that can slow him down. I think the Bama defense does just enough to make sure that Fernando Mendoza feels uncomfortable. Give me Bama 30, Bama 27, Indiana 24.
Yeah, that's completely fair. And this next game, I want to say it's in the Sugar Bowl. I could be wrong,
It is.
but yeah. So the Sugar Bowl, um, we have a Georgia versus Ole Miss rematch from early in the season. Georgia sneaked out of that game 41-35 after finally getting some late stops in the game. Um, for that game, I'm going to go with Georgia winning the game. I think that ever since Mississippi State, they've looked like the best team in the country. When they played that Mississippi State team, a switch flipped in their head. They've played so much better on defense, especially. They they blew out Mississippi State. I think it was like something 41-14. I could be wrong. You have Texas, who they limit to 10 points. And then they have their cupcake game, I'm pretty sure. And then you had Georgia Tech, who they only hold to, I think, 6 or 9. It was one of those numbers. And then Alabama, who they pretty much shut out besides that one touchdown drive. Either way, though, I think that overall they've looked like the best team in the nation ever since that Mississippi State game. Ole Miss, obviously, you saw, and it's Tulane, so I'm not going to give them too much credit for that. But they had they show that they very excited for this. They're playing behind Pete Golding, who is the official head coach for next season. But I think that Georgia is going to overwhelm them. I think that Kirby Smart's going to outcoach Pete Golding, to be completely honest with you. I think that Georgia is fired up, and I think that Georgia honestly goes on to win the national championship. So with my statement being that, I'm always going to pick the dogs. I got Georgia winning 34-17. I could see it 34-24, but I think that Georgia's going to win pretty handily, and apparently so does Bart. So what do you have for this game?
So I don't know if this is going to be a Georgia blowout or a Georgia close win, but I have Georgia. This is I think the most lopsided coaching matchup in terms of just head coaches. I'm not saying that Pete Golding isn't going to be a decent head coach for Ole Miss, but the second game you're a head coach and you're coaching against the head coach in college football, right? A guy who has been here numerous times before, who knows how to coach these games, who has gotten his team ready to play in the past 6 weeks, has been the best team in college football, and I don't really think there's a second fiddle. I think Georgia has been the best team in all of college football. If you're making me do a score, give me 38-24 Georgia.
All right. So, yeah, I agree with that completely. So, if you don't have anything else to say, I think that we can call that a show. Thank you guys for watching. Like I said at the beginning, follow Ghost on social media at 40 Acre Vibes. Um, follow Joshy Manning at ESQ, as it says on his name right there. Follow me on X NBA Hornboy, and also follow Pack Pack Talks XO. Y'all will see a lot of good football content in there. And then also subscribe to the YouTube channel, where you have a bunch of different shows from different conferences and different teams. So if you are looking for something that piques your interest or is something about your team, there's a good chance that you can find it on this channel. And also, if you like basketball, there will be basketball content coming up on here eventually. So stay tuned for that. But other than that, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, we'll see you guys next.